Hello, everybody. This is History Beyond Virginia's Textbooks. Today we're talking about racism, anti-racism movements in Virginia. I'm Sid Pham.
I'm Kira.
I'm Sid Cope.
And I'm Rohit.
And we're going to
Rohit.
be talking about anti-racism movements, because...
Let's go.
Let's go.
Okay, so... Obviously, in like history classes, there's a lot of anti-racism things that we talk about.
Mostly civil rights for African Americans, though.
Yeah.
There's like very little
There's but
on other.
yeah.
Literally any other.
Any other
Besides
race.
feminist movements.
I mean, some Indian, Native American things, and sometimes
Yeah.
some Asian, but it's not.
Sprinkled in there. There's a little bit of Asian.
I feel like
rights.
majority of the Asian and Native
all
American I've
over
seen
the
has
West
been
Coast,
internet.
And that too.
Yeah.
In our textbook,
Only internet.
there's a little bit about Asian rights when you get more towards like world wars, and
Yeah.
especially with Japan,
Oh.
Japanese
Yeah, it
Americans.
was very focused on Chinese and Japanese.
Japanese
and
internment
Chinese,
camps.
yeah.
But other than those two, there was the like little section of Vietnam, there was the little section
Yeah.
on the Korea War. But even in like outside of American history, even in world history, there was one unit on all of Asia
Yes.
for world history.
Yeah.
That was a little weird.
As if Asia didn't do anything.
Nah.
Or the fact that Asia is like a third of the population of
Yeah.
the world.
It's just
And like
huge.
China,
China itself
Russia,
is
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, we talked about India for like 10 minutes, and then like India's like a seventh of the entire population.
Facts.
Yeah.
Hooray!
Yeah.
Europe. Let's take AP European history, even though it is the smallest continent.
Facts.
And it's one of the most recent.
Isn't
No,
it
Australia. I
Australia
always
is
forget
probably small.
Australia is a continent.
But like,
Australia the smallest continent?
Yeah,
Europe
it's
is
Australia
pretty
than
small.
Europe.
Europe is pretty small.
Yeah, well,
And it's
yeah,
probably like
compared
one
to
of the
Asia.
most recent civilizations, whereas, you know, India, China, Africa, like,
Those are all
Even
the
America,
oldest ancient
even
ones.
America, like you have Native Americans here for like a
Exactly.
long time.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the natives.
well,
so,
I mean,
you know.
like, the Europeans kind of destroyed all their history.
But
so
yeah,
there's not much to talk about
U.S.
anymore.
history and this area, this land, only starts in colonial times. So for
Obviously.
real.
No,
Obviously.
we didn't
Nothing
start
else
this.
happened.
Never, like, this land didn't even exist, you know what I'm saying?
Before
Yeah.
white
Before-
people
yeah,
stepped on this
15
land.
whatever.
Not
New
even the
world,
Vikings,
guys.
specifically Columbus.
Yeah.
It's literally the new world. Like, as he was sailing across the Atlantic,
It's
it
like-
just was generating.
No, it was like Minecraft.
World Chunk generation.
World Chunk generation.
Okay, we got a little sidetracked. My bad. I started that.
That's good, that's good.
That was great.
Mine is structured a little more like Rohit's. I just have topics that we can talk about. My topic question is, how effective do you think the anti-racism movements were? And, like, how that changed, how things, if it changed.
Oh, it's a little complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
but
little
it's-
complex.
especially in
like-
Virginia specifically.
Yeah, but that's kind of why I thought it was going to be an interesting topic to, like, bring up and talk about. Since Virginia is a southern state, it was very, very
Conservative.
conservative,
Racist.
racist. You know, racist.
Those two things don't go
Conservative
hand
and
in hand,
racist.
by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
just-
Republican conservatism, particularly today's Republican Party. Not to get too political, I feel bad getting
Not to
political,
get
but like
political,
today's Republican Party with like Trump and everything is definitely a little more racist.
Yeah, a little bit.
All the phobics.
All the phobias,
All the
are
bigotry.
coming out.
Yep.
But yeah,
Going back to what Kira said, I feel like both sides have like definitely radicalized a lot.
Oh,
Yeah, there's like
yes.
very much polarization in American
Oh,
politics.
Yeah.
I've
It's not
noticed
even
that.
it's not even economic or political anymore. It's all moral beliefs.
Yeah.
It's all
I think
social.
that's kind of like relatively worse. Than,
Yeah.
Are you religious or not?
yeah.
Basically.
It has. Yeah.
I mean, I'm religious and I'm still a Democrat because I'm religious, but I still believe people should be able to, live.
I don't know.
live with rights.
Exactly.
Can't
Let
just
the
live
women
on-
vote.
Let,
Anyway, yeah. First point I have is like, how do you think racism has like presented itself in Virginia, like as time progressed, and even like now?
The Confederacy.
well, yeah, but I mean,
And how that influenced it, obviously.
we can talk. We can talk strictly about like
Shift's position. Let me
can-
get comfortable here.
we can talk about how people, at least in our school system, how that is a major issue, and how white schools, Cosby, are presented and are given the amount of privilege, and then you go down the road to like Manchester or
Matoaca.
Matoaca,
Thomas
or
Dale, even.
Yeah,
My
that-
homeschool.
yeah.
Yeah, but
There's white privilege in
definitely.
every acre of every state.
Yes.
And Virginia is one of them. If you go outside of the city in like 10 minutes outside, even inner city schools, oh my God, it's like they can't even afford to like get hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
In like
And
the
it's-
that's
ghetto-
something.
ghetto stuff.
The
Yes.
ghettos and that sort
White
of thing.
privilege is just like, it's a constant. It doesn't matter. Like, a lot of things are very regionally dependent in America.
Yes.
That doesn't matter. There's white privilege no matter where you go, especially in education. And like even just like better quality classes, like Cosby and Clover Hill, like and like Midlow area is all considered very much like, oh, those are the smart schools, those are the good schools, those are the ones you want to go to.
Yes. I wonder
Whereas
why.
no one is saying, oh, Elsie Bird has a good engineering school, you really want to go there.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the like lower income areas.
And then you look at James River, and it's like Salisbury, but then it also has like trailer parks. And
Yeah.
when my
Yeah.
sister went there a couple of years ago, she's now this year she's graduating from UVA. But when she went there for the leadership program, there was gang fights. Like outside of school.
That's crazy.
Like literally people trying to leave the parking lot, and there were
Yeah.
people like literally gang fights.
Yeah.
actively jumping people.
Yes, actively
I think
jumping
that
people.
White privilege is such an interesting topic, not only in and of itself, but even this is going to be more anecdotal from my father. But when he was younger, this is not his opinion now, by the way. But when he was younger, he would hear that term and he didn't know what it meant because
White privilege?
White privilege.
Oh, really?
Because he would think to himself, well, I'm not privileged because he came from a lower income family where his parents were divorced.
Yeah.
His stepfather was a construction worker. His mom didn't really work, and he had to work a minimum wage job and was like failing school because he had to support his family and his siblings, and
Yeah.
they lived in like a very small house. And so he was not privileged in the typical sense of what privilege is. So he would look at that term and he didn't know as much about it. So he would think, oh, I'm not privileged. This is my life, like whatever. And then as he got older, he realized like, okay, white privilege isn't necessarily that you are privileged. It's just that you are privileged because you're white.
Yes.
Like that there's less that you have to worry about than someone who is of color. Then
definitely.
like it adds on to it. So even though you might not be privileged, you still enjoy a lack of certain like discrimination, even if you are poor. And I think that that's an interesting conversation in terms of how lower income people can be more like, how do I say this?
Disadvantage, but not.
Yeah, like lower income people have a lot of this. That's why a lot of times you
They
see
have disadvantages, but they're not the same.
yeah, and how a lot of them will have that opinion on white privilege, like white lower income people, and that's why you see I've noticed a lot of like country type redneck people tend to be more conservative and often have typically more racist views, like stereotyping. Obviously, they're not a monolith. There are people in the country who are democratic, but who are Democrats, not democratic. But even just like how that impacts it, because they grow up thinking, as my dad did, well, I'm not privileged, so obviously that isn't true, and then they might not bother to educate themselves on it.
Yeah, that anecdote definitely like goes to show what white privilege is. Like he didn't even understand what it was
Yeah.
from that young age. So yeah, I mean, definitely I knew as an Indian, like I learned early on what white privilege was.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of my other non-white friends definitely knew what it was.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even now, like, this is it kind of stows away from what we were just talking about, but my sisters, my little sisters are experiencing, like, a lot of that racism, I feel like. It's interesting to me though, because I, as a kid, was not necessarily, I didn't experience a lot of racism, but now that racism has been talked about more recently, I don't know if it's because of the internet or like
Yeah,
Well,
younger,
those are
topics
big,
coming
like,
up.
younger
but
kids have more
kids
access
are-
to those topics and
Yeah.
educating themselves.
But since they have those topics to like explore, that my little sisters have been experiencing a lot more racism than I ever have in my life, and it's super weird because my sister will come home and she's like, today I got called a ching chong, and then it's like, oh my god, why are you experiencing this young, like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that there's more exposure to the topics, it's also that there's more exposure to misinformation
Yeah.
and young kids who not only hear their parents' opinions now, but then they're scrolling on YouTube shorts and they come across
Yeah.
the wrong side of YouTube and suddenly they're hearing misinformation and bigotry that leads them to believe it, because a lot of young kids these days aren't taught internet safety in the
Yeah.
same way
Yeah.
that even we were, even
Yeah.
just a
I mean,
couple
we
years
were
different.
even barely
Yeah,
taught about
exactly.
internet safety.
So they can just trust it. And so it's a really double-sided coin of how you can get education easier. And I've talked about this before, but there's also like, they just see it and they believe it. They haven't
Yeah.
been taught like to question their sources and everything that they see on the
Yeah.
internet. So that can leave kids to believe in more racist opinions and impact how they're
yeah.
treating
It's-
one another.
It's not even like, because of the internet, it's not limited to the box of their family's belief anymore.
Yeah.
It can come like their ideas can come from anywhere now.
Yeah.
And it's scary. It makes me nervous seeing my sisters like on the internet now.
Yeah.
That their minds can be so heavily influenced by what they're watching, especially with TikTok and shorts and the diversity and the beliefs of people that are
Especially short form
so-
content.
Yeah, it doesn't make me happy. But
It's so easy to get lost in and get
Yeah.
consumed in just scrolling and scrolling. And you see one interesting video, and even if what they're telling you is wrong, you think, oh, that's interesting. And then you click on the page and you keep absorbing that
Yeah.
content. And then that page and pages like it come up on your feed because it's personalized to
Yeah.
what you like to see. So you're only taking in that one perspective. And it's so easy to just
Yeah.
get lost.
Yeah, and I feel like families also definitely support like racist beliefs or non-racist beliefs. Like,
Yeah.
you know, children definitely learn from them, and I've definitely seen that from my parents. Like there's like different stereotypes among
Oh, yeah.
states in
Oh, yeah.
India, so they definitely like are trying to teach me those, and they're definitely stereotyping against other races in general.
yeah,
I mean,
So-
it's another thing with textbooks is that a lot of other places other than America, like India, are treated as a monolith. But India is so
Oh my
diverse.
God. There's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like Africa. People are speaking different languages
like
in
there are
Africa.
a lot of
and
different languages.
There's so many.
and there's so
Yeah.
many different like
So
places.
many. There's
cultures,
so many different
different
cultures.
people.
There's so exactly.
I feel like the only reason India is one country is because the British came and unified it into one
Probably.
But yeah, basically.
Because before it was just like 100 different kingdoms, and each
Yeah.
one was like fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And
Which you can argue that it's more unified that way, but there's less expression and all that kind of stuff. There's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like those people did not want to be under one
No.
rule
No.
at all.
yeah,
And then Britain came in and was like, actually, this is the system we use, so you're going to use it too.
But then
Yeah.
they also are in war with every other country, fighting for
everything.
Actually,
Take over,
that
yeah.
is incorrect.
yeah.
But anyways, going back to Virginia.
Yeah.
That got.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I sidetracked things.
No, no, no.
I get so sidetracked because my
It's-
brain goes in a
it's
million
okay, it's
different
okay.
It was all of us. So yeah, like
But yeah.
the history of racism in Virginia, I feel like it's really ebbed and flowed.
Yeah.
Just like politics.
Yeah.
Swing state.
Especially
Yep. Oh, yeah.
in the 19th and 20th centuries, because before 19th century it was just all pretty racist.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Confederacy.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
then-
yeah, we're not diverse. Like, Virginia is not as diverse as a lot of other states are.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to come at it from a different perspective. In New Jersey, there was more diversity in terms of the amount of different races. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I was exposed to Spanish a lot more than people that I've seen here, because there was like a large Hispanic population that spoke Spanish, so I would learn it from my friends, and it was an integral part of the curriculum. And then there was also like a higher Asian population. But moving to the South, there's a higher African American population. So it's diverse in different ways, because there's a lot more African Americans
Yeah.
in the South. So it's not that there's like a lack of diversity per se. Well, there is a lack of diversity because a lot of it is just white and black. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of like other races represented as you move south. But there is a certain element of diversity in terms of like reclaiming different things and like still putting an effort, because this is a sidetrack again, but I see a lot of arguments that online of people being like, well, if you live in the South and they're discriminating against you, just move to the North. But like, that's just abandoning it, and like that's people's homes. So I feel like it's important to
Also, racism is not just in the South.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So they'll be like, if you're being oppressed here, just move here, and that's such a crappy solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, like literally the
just
first
run away.
assignment. The first assignment we did in historical research was the KKK parading in
Yeah.
Maine. This
Yeah.
was like in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's definitely not just in the South.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, since I don't know, it's very
Oh, sorry, I have one more thing to say.
No, go ahead.
I also wanted to talk about colleges, because I think that really, kind of tells about diversity.
All the Ivy
Oh,
Leagues
yeah.
are in the
And
Northeast.
yeah, and especially here in Virginia, we, what's the diversity looking like in UVA? Let's just hold on.
20%
UVA.
not 20,
80% white?
70% white,
Yeah.
10% Asian.
But while she is looking that up, I don't know if you guys have noticed recently, but like there have been lots of Indians and just brown people in general like moving into Virginia.
Oh yeah.
So
Really?
yeah, you haven't noticed that.
Oh,
So
no.
I wanted to bring that up. Like maybe we only notice some races,
Yeah.
right? So maybe Sid, you would be noticing like Asian people moving into Virginia, or
yeah.
not as many Asians. But yeah,
I mean, I already noticed like there's in where we are right now, the Asian population isn't as big as how it is in Nova or DC or
California.
yeah, and there's definitely no like there are very little Asians in Western Virginia, I feel like,
yeah.
or like anywhere that's not.
Yeah, I feel like as the closer you get to either coast, like
Yeah.
the more diverse it gets.
Yeah, and that even, I feel like that goes back in history towards more like, that's where the immigration was. That's
Yeah.
why when you get
Yeah.
further north in New York, when there was like Ellis Island and a lot of like a main hub for immigration, that's why you get more diversity of different races as opposed to just black and white, because that's where people were coming in. And so a lot of them like built, like made a home there and settled there because that's where they moved to. And it's even like a lot of people couldn't afford to travel further necessarily. That's also why you get like more Irish populations and stuff like that further north, and even like out west, that's where like a lot of like you go back centuries, that's where a lot of Chinese people were going to, because that's how they could get there, going sailing east.
Yeah,
I
like
mean, you don't find diversity in the middle.
The Midwest is just
Like
white
South
mothers.
Dakota, white.
The Utah Midwest mother stereotype is just a
Utah,
white
that's
mom
crazy.
being white.
Yeah.
yeah, because like once you get off that ship, you kind
You
of
don't
spend
really-
you spend all your money.
Yeah, you can't
getting
go anywhere else.
Yeah, so you don't have money to move inwards.
Yeah.
and that's where you're already gonna find other people of your culture, your
That's why-
religion.
It's
yeah,
community.
and New York is so
Yeah.
diverse, especially New York. That like
Oh,
where
yeah.
Ellis Island was. That's one of the
Yeah.
reasons it's so diverse, because people set up their own little centers for culture, like
Yeah.
Little Italy and Chinatown and all
Yeah.
of that different stuff. And even if Virginia is not quite as diverse, that definitely contributes to it, since it's a coastal state, that it still had more of that like open passage over the sea.
Yeah,
Like even if you, right now, if you walk into New York City, you'll see many different people.
Yeah, and
And-
that's even just cities in general.
Yeah.
yeah, because all the major cities are just still near the coastline.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many big cities can you really name that
Even
aren't?
Chicago is in the Midwest, but it's on a lake. It's
Yeah.
still near water.
Yeah.
Like the only one that's not near water would be like Atlanta. That's a pretty big city.
I mean, that's like right.
Atlanta's in a coastal state still.
Yeah.
Georgia is on the coast.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I have some statistics for you. Okay, so I looked up four different universities that I think cover kind of what it is. Hold on, I'm gonna look up a fifth one. But
Yeah, I just saw on her Chromebook, ODU, which is on the coast, right? That was like, what, 40% white, 40% black?
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of all over the place. Okay, so going from UVA, I'm just gonna go like, I don't know. I'm just gonna go through. UVA is 55.9% white.
Oh my god.
Asian is 15.4, Black is 6.6, Hispanic 6.6, and then there's a bunch of others, and then interracial is 5%. So, or sorry, international. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's UVA. Tech,
Western school.
West, yep, Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Slaves built
I'd be
UVA.
I'd be interested
Oh my
in seeing
God.
Longwood's statistics, considering
my
Longwood
goodness.
is in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Longwood is literally near Farmville. It is literally called Farmville. I find that so funny.
Also, I want to point out that there was a higher number of Asians in UVA than black people, even
Yeah.
though they're more African Americans in
But
America.
yeah.
I wonder if it's because, like, since that, I don't remember what the law was, but that one law was passed where it's like you can use race to get people into
Oh,
college.
that
Yeah,
was,
but you can't have the quotas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh, that
I
was a
wonder
Supreme
if-
Court case. Was it?
I don't even
I
remember.
don't remember. But yeah, I saw MIT's, MIT and Thomas Jefferson High School. They have very high Asian rates, and those are like, Thomas Jefferson High School is ranked the best
Bach.
school in.
It was Bach in 1978 with UC, one of the universities in California. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, so MIT is as most people know, the best university in America.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably the world. And then Thomas Jefferson High School
That
is the
feels
best high school.
biased considering you want to go there, but
Well, no, if you look at all the rankings and statistics, it's literally ranked
I mean,
number
it is
one.
it is a good school. It's a
Yeah.
very good school.
And then also Thomas Jefferson High School was ranked the number one high school. So they just have a lot of Asians. I don't know if that's
It might be like just the Asian like thing where
but it's
Asians
also
are.
Yeah, genetics.
I've heard from some of my friends like talking to like Austin and Aiden about how it can be more difficult for them to get into college as an
Yeah.
Asian male because
Yeah.
colleges don't want that sometimes because they don't want it to seem like
it's definitely a lot
stereotyping.
more competitive because
Yeah.
there's this website College Vine that shows you how likely you are to get into a school. And I'm an Indian male, so they looked at that and they showed me that the average SAT score and GPAs for Indian males or Indians in general were higher than the average SAT and GPAs in general for that college. So it might be more difficult if they don't look at race. Then that would be great for me. So
Yeah.
you know.
So I'm just gonna go through some of these. I looked up some more. So tech is 64.5% white, which is higher than UVA.
Yeah.
10.3% Asian, 6.9% Hispanic, and 6.8% international. This is Virginia State University, so this is historically black, and that is
VSU. That's the smaller one out near Petersburg, right?
Not Petersburg, Chester.
Chester.
Almost
yeah,
Petersburg,
It's
yeah.
in Petersburg. I drive past it to go to my piano lessons every day.
Oh, okay.
okay. That is 93.8% black.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And that's literally like the only thing on the pie chart that I
Oh
can
my
see.
God.
And then this is Old Dominion is 40.6% white, 34.3% black or African American, 9.1% Hispanic, and 7.3 multi-ethnic. Asian isn't even like isn't even on there. VCU is 42.7% white, 19.7% black, 14.5% Asian, 11% Hispanic, 7.5 multi-ethnic. And then Longwood is 74.6% white.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was like Longwood is out in the middle of nowhere. That one's got to be really white.
10.2% black
God.
or African American.
Yeah.
And then just as a little breakdown for Virginia, white is 68.8%, black is about 20%, and Indian or Native American is 0.6%. So
Oh my god.
there's a little bit of
I wonder.
Native Americans in college is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
In terms of access to education and
yeah.
reservations and all of that. Oh my god.
I'm surprised there are like that many Native Americans in Virginia, considering like this was one of the first states, so this would be like the first state where Oregon
Everybody would
didn't-
get
And a
kicked
lot
out.
of them were more
Kicked out, killed.
northern anyways. Like there was a lot more Native American civilizations as you move further north, especially towards like the Great Lakes, and then you go out more west and like northeast.
Yeah,
Water,
But, like-
irrigation, maize, corn.
Kansas, like the Midwest area, some of those Native Americans, like the Great Plains and everything. So just different
Yeah.
ideals.
Okay, we're picking back up in the middle. This is the next day because we ran out of time.
next class period.
Okay. Anyway, diversity in colleges. I wonder, like, okay, question. Racism prominent in Virginia, or how it presents itself in Virginia. Just a recap.
I mean, I feel like I don't even have the resources to be able to answer that question correctly.
Yeah.
But I will say that with the Black Lives Matter protests and everything, a lot of Confederate statues have been taken down in
Yeah.
Virginia specifically.
I remember talking about that in a project earlier this year because it was some podcast being like, it's so stupid how they want to take down the statues. And I wrote like a 2-page essay on like, no, this is
No.
why it's not stupid. This is what the statues mean. This is why people want to take them down. And taking them down is not going to hurt your history. Like, it's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can't say it's just stupid. People have their own opinions.
No,
but
not taking down the statues is stupid. The argument that they were making.
oh, okay. So like, there has been some movement, at least I would say, in Virginia's racism. Like, in that sort of, there has been movement towards equality, and there has also been things against that. I'm sure I could pull up some Governor Youngkin gets rid of like equal
Oh,
rights.
I
and
saw
Yeah,
something
there's-
about Governor Youngkin, like he removed some part of the curriculum that like teaching
African American
people.
studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AP
And-
African American studies.
Yes.
Because it's like it influences. I don't even know. I don't
It was
even
too
remember why.
connected, and it was to like things
Yeah.
like that. How it could be connected to other issues is what Ms. Brown was saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyways, so they're with every opposite and equal reaction, there's always something that's going on.
I feel like Virginia is such a
So-
mixed area too in
Well,
terms of
yeah, swing
progress
state.
and regression.
Swing
Because
state.
yeah, it's a swing state, and it was also like it's as far north as you can go and still be considered the South.
Correct.
Usually,
Yeah.
but it's still the South.
Yeah.
So it's a very weird mixture. It's not going to be the same as Georgia, but it's
Yeah.
far different
Yeah.
than somewhere like New York,
Yeah.
Or
New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if like okay, I had points that I was thinking about last night and I just jotted them down. Like so back on the thing of like non-diversity. The not yeah. I wonder if that like contributed to the arrogance to racism nowadays because of like kids, as I was saying last time, being racist and like not noticing that it's bad or just trying to be funny or
Yeah.
It's definitely a mixture of both. As I've noticed, you got some people joking and then some people being serious, and then you just don't know who's joking and who's being serious.
Yeah, and it's also, I feel like when you joke about something a lot, even if it starts as a joke, it starts to work its way into your mind and your language. It's ironic, but at a certain point, it's like, when does it stop being ironic and when is it too much? But like, with jokes of any kind, if you say them too much, it starts to just work its way into your actual mindset and your actual beliefs. That's why saying like jokes like that can be borderline of just like, you say it so much that you just start to believe
Yeah.
it sometimes.
Yeah.
And not just you, even other people, they're like, is this kid being serious or
Exactly.
are they joking?
Especially when like it's outside, like you don't know this person. So
Yeah.
if everybody just started joking about it, like
Like
it's
when I walk down the street and I make a joke in public of like, I hate gay people, they don't have the context that I am also.
yeah,
So like they can just be like, oh damn, that person's so homophobic.
Yeah.
Which is why making those jokes is not always the best. And
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has things to improve on.
And then you also don't know everything about the other person. Like they might be really sensitive to those kinds of jokes.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, I've seen a lot of things on, like, TikTok and stuff, and, like, just social media where there's some, like, for example, black people that are uncomfortable with the N-word, and then there's some that say it often and use it toward whoever,
That's
whatever.
even like with the word queer in the LGBTQ plus community,
Yeah.
a lot of people have reclaimed it and just
Yeah.
use it as a neutral term. I
Yeah.
typically use it as a neutral term, but I
Me
know
too.
that there's some people in the community who still view it as a slur
Yeah.
and don't like saying it. That's like people a lot of gay men who tried to reclaim the F slur in like the 80s and the 90s, and it didn't really work. But a lot of older gay men who you talk to may use it and drop it, and it can be kind of jarring because you're not
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah. And I will say, if it was always really odd to me that it was always really odd to me when, you know, a black person would say the N-word to me or at me, just in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, I find it really strange. It makes me kind of uncomfortable.
Obviously, I'm not here to like be like, you can't say that. Or-
Yeah.
it's something that I've noticed and something that I've, taken into account, and it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I feel like just as society progresses, I feel like as we set boundaries with each other, I don't know. I think it's important, especially if you have friends that often say the N-word and then just kind of go about your business, but it makes you feel uncomfortable.
I don't really, but
I
I
don't-
notice I hear it so much at work, and
Yeah.
especially when the managers aren't around to tell them not to say it. And sometimes I'll just be like, "Oh, I'm not used to hearing that. That's weird."
Yeah. Well, and especially in the environment that we're in,
Non-diverse.
it's pretty non-diverse here,
I can
at least in
name,
Mass
let's see,
I.
like
There's like a couple.
there's like
a
a
couple
couple.
black
I can
people.
count them on one hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it a lot at track because that's a very black
Diverse.
heavy.
Yeah. Sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's non-diverse in the sense that it's mostly black. There's like one or two white kids. There's me, an Indian, and then you got like one or two Hispanic kids.
I feel like it's important for context to note that Rohit is Indian.
Oh, Sid fam is Asian.
Me and Sid Cope are both white people.
Yes. So yeah.
So take everything that we say with a grain of salt
Yeah.
towards racist issues because we haven't experienced it ourselves. It's just our own research and what we've noticed and observed.
And then Sid Fam and I have experienced it and a bit of research.
Yeah.
And then we've all had a bit of racism in our lives, probably.
I at least observed it from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, we have our bad moments when we do it ourselves.
I mean,
either intentionally or not.
Yeah.
That's why it's important, like the more recent movement of like anti-racism, instead of just not being racist, trying to actively fight it, and when you see someone being racist, try to say something to them if it doesn't put you in danger.
Yeah.
Say like, oh, that don't say stuff like that, don't do stuff like that, like type of things.
Yeah,
like that.
and like most of the time, again, it's not really like, it doesn't really affect me. It doesn't really hurt. It doesn't really hurt anything. It's just like, it's something that kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, and like I don't know how to respond because it's like it's just so different. It's so different. And then I had an experience in middle school where I was friends with a girl who would like just claim that I was racist. Like this person was black, and she would just constantly claim everything that I did was racist, and everything that I like, even if it was a joke. And most of the time it was a joke, but like again, like we said, if it continues, it like I obviously wasn't being racist. There was
like-
nothing that I was doing, and it was like it made me feel so uncomfortable, and it made me like, and not only was it just like demeaning and like
I mean, it puts you in a position that you
it
can't
does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course I'm not I try my best, and
Yeah.
of course I try to educate myself, but it was just like constant, and I felt like attacked 24/7.
That's like, and it's certainly not equivalent to experiencing like actual racism.
Oh,
But like in middle
absolutely
school
not.
in 8th grade, of like I sat behind this kid who was black, and like sometimes I would be like, hey, I can't see the board around you, just like normal person thing, like anyone who was sitting in front of me, like, oh, I can't see the board around you, like, can you move your head? And he'd be like, it's because I'm black, isn't it? Like, you're racist.
Yeah,
And I'd be like,
yeah.
no, I just want to take notes on the civics
Exactly.
exam.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's like Sid, I think you were experiencing like that kind of sensitivity thing that, you don't really know how sensitive that person is. And like,
Yeah, and obviously they weren't. If they were just saying that I was racist out of nowhere, then I don't know how sensitive they were to it. But
And
like,
yeah, you don't know.
Yeah,
if
and I
she
don't know
was
how to
joking.
respond
No.
to that, because I just like, oh, like what do you say to that? Like, no.
yeah, exactly. What do you say? How do you continue? How do you like get through
It just
that?
makes
How
it
do you
awkward. Like,
it's
yeah.
so
such an
awkward.
awkward stance.
It's so awkward. I feel like it's awkward for like both people. I don't know the reason. I don't know why she felt like she needed to like proclaim that because I was white I was racist. And not to say, that all white people
like-
aren't racist,
Yeah,
because
I
that's
feel
just
like
not true. But it was
every
just my
person has
personal
their own like
experience.
innate prejudice, but there's
Yeah.
people who fight it, and there's people who don't,
Yeah.
and just like exist, and then there's people
Yeah.
who succumb to it and are actual like bigots in multiple senses.
Yeah.
That's like, again, not equivalent personal experience of like, I might joke to my friends who I know, like, oh, that's homophobic that you said that, even though it's not homophobic, but that's because they're my friends and I know they're comfortable
Yeah,
with it.
no,
Like, I know
it's all
Sid,
boundary stuff.
yeah, like I know Sid isn't going to be uncomfortable if I'm like, oh, you won't like give that to me, like, oh, you're homophobic. But like, I wouldn't say that to anyone who I wasn't close friends with, who I
Yeah.
knew they were comfortable with. Like, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that to a coworker.
No.
And then there's other people who have different boundaries, and they'll say that to someone who they have never
Yeah.
met before, and it's like,
And-
oh, but I want to give more space for you guys to also share your experiences, because I feel like you guys probably have more experience with it than
Definitely.
we
I
do.
want to say one more thing. And looking back on my middle school experience with that, I think it was mainly just I was afraid to give boundaries. And that was one thing that I learned from that, is that I now give boundaries, and I'm like, hey, that makes me really uncomfortable. And now I don't have that problem where people just like proclaim that I am racist without really any evidence or anything like that. It's not really a problem anymore. But if it were to happen, I would definitely say something, because it's not about like, even, okay, this is hypothetical, but if you encountered someone that was racist and you just said that they were racist, that's not really that's not helping anything.
Yeah, and someone can be racist and even not realize it because that's how they grew up. So even telling
Exactly.
someone that they were racist, even if they are racist, they can disagree with you and argue with you, and it doesn't really get much of a place. Or someone is racist and they know it and they don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like
It's just weird.
that
It's weird.
the joking about, oh, you're racist. It's, in some ways it works for people. Like, it can be a sensitive topic, but it also can be a way for people of the same race or different races to be, I don't know, connected by racism.
and like, I mean, like, it also comes to like joking about trauma. How like
Yeah.
we can make jokes
It's
about stuff that we've
definitely-
experienced. Other people
Yeah.
can make jokes about stuff that they've experienced, and it's
Yeah.
like a coping mechanism. Like, I make a lot
yeah,
of jokes that to
exactly.
other people would be like, why is she saying that?
Yeah.
But like,
yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's kind of just a defense mechanism more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I don't know, it might be, you could describe it as insensitive, but
I mean,
it's
that's-
non-serious stuff that
Yeah.
some people like to joke about.
Yeah.
It's definitely not going to stop.
especially in a
but-
non-serious setting.
Yeah, but it's definitely, like, if it happens, boundaries are very important.
Boundaries are important.
Boundaries are
in
always
general.
important, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's hard to set boundaries for like all of society.
Yeah.
So like when you experience that with like someone random, like
You kind of just have to be like, oh,
yeah, like get away from that person, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can.
I mean, you don't just say that to some random people. Like, you don't say that to random people.
I mean that's our opinion, but then someone
Yeah.
else like you just say that to random people.
yeah.
When I
Yeah,
get
if
like
it's
a
a
random
joke.
person in drive-through who comes through and is like and like makes a weird joke, I usually just go, oh ha ha ha, and then they just like keep moving because it's not worth it to like argue with the
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
who you're seeing for like
3
a minute or two
less
max
than a
as
minute.
like you take their payment and they move on. You know,
And then again, that's your opinion. Someone else might think, oh, it's worth it to argue with that person.
because then they learn for the future.
Yeah,
it's
and
separate
then we gotta
arguments.
change them. But then again, like
That's
some
the
people just
savior
don't change.
complex.
Is
Yeah.
the drive-through
And why-
really the opportunity to speak to someone about their habits? No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get you through, sir. Can you not make creepy comments to me?
Hey, baby, you got that's a good shirt on you.
Can I get your
Thanks for my Kane's uniform compliment.
But yeah, so I try to draw in a little more history because I feel like this is more recent stuff. So history-wise, there have been a lot of anti-racism movements, like, you know, we learned it in history. I don't really know the exact time periods, but it's happened before.
Civil rights movement in like 1960s.
Yeah.
1964 Voting
And
Rights
then
Act.
there was like Black Power in 1950s.
Black Panther
and
movement.
all those stuff. Yeah.
Anti-Semitism movements.
Yep.
And then like, you know, people going against anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you have
everything.
different
KKK.
classes of movement.
KKK rise again in
Yeah.
the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
There was different classes of movements, like you had Martin Luther King Jr.,
With the peaceful-
non-violent, and then you had Malcolm X, and then
Yep.
you had a name I don't remember that was more like separatist and more let's go back to Africa and reclaim our roots, which was an interesting argument because
Africanism.
Like
Pan-Africanism.
because
That's what
there
it
was
is called.
I guess that there's the argument that like return to your roots, but these people have also
It's like the
they
go back
were
to your country kind of
enslaved
stuff.
in like the 1600s, so a lot of their ancestors were brought over in the 16 and 1700s, and now they've like their lineage has been here for like 200 years and
Yeah.
they are American, even if it's
have
like
a
a
culture.
separate experience. It's still like they aren't going to feel super connected if they go back to Africa because that's not where they're from. And there was a lot of work done earlier to destroy African culture in the slave system because they didn't want them to have the joys of their culture. They didn't want them to preserve it. So that even further separates them because it didn't get passed down as much. And then you have things like where they like preserved it as like a form of like rebellion in a way that wasn't gonna get them like killed or anything like that. So just like trying to preserve their culture as like an act against the system.
Yeah. I mean,
But
yeah, there's been things like that. And then there's also, like, there have been Chinese, Asian.
yeah, Chinese
Things.
Exclusion Act.
Yeah, there were a lot of, there's discrimination towards Asians because of war, you know, the Vietnam War.
Japanese concentration
Japanese-
camps because the Japanese bombed us, so now we're going to take all of the Japanese Americans, even though they're legal citizens and they are Americans, and we're going to put them into concentration camps
Because we can't trust them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry. So Pan-Africanism was kind of headed by W.E. Du Bois, which I think is really interesting.
W.E.B. Du Bois.
Du Bois.
Yeah, I don't know how you want to say it, but Du Bois sounds better to me. So
They said it like Du Bois because they were Americanized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Henry Sylvester Williams was the other main guy.
Yeah.
And there were also others. But going back to Japanese internment camps, my history teacher, who I will not name, talked about how the Japanese internment camps were not concentration camps, which you know you can
They're
argue.
separate. They're separate things of the same genre.
They weren't there to kill them necessarily, which is what concentration camps, what we think of when we think of internment camps. It was mainly just housing. But then he went on like a tangent about how, you know, these were like they were great facilities, and they had good food, and that he had been there, and that it wasn't that bad. That was one of the main things that he was talking about in the Japanese internment camps during like after the Pearl Harbor attack.
Pearl Holler.
Yeah. I remember in 7th grade, we were learning about the internment camps, and my teacher said the Japanese were excited to go to these camps, and they were proud to be Americans. They were proud to build these internment camps for themselves and everything. And I was like,
American.
It's such whitewashing
I know.
of the history,
Yeah.
and just
So-
completely ignoring what
That's-
actually happened.
That's some fun deets.
That's
I
also
know.
one of the issues with the education system is how anyone who teaches can interject their opinion
Yep.
wherever they want. And sure, there's action you can take by like going to an administrator and saying like, hey, they did this. But the likelihood that action will happen because you went to administrator is oftentimes incredibly low because they have other things to worry about that they often don't prioritize unless it's something like really bad that your teacher did.
Yeah.
But like, I remember
My teacher said the N-word.
entirely
That can be put off a
separate
little bit.
story. But like it's so interesting how like the bias is just like interjected into the curriculum in
yeah.
America without like there's not a whole lot of educational regulation in the United States.
Yeah.
In terms of like uniformity and getting everything
Yeah.
so that everyone can have an equal education
Because
and be
even
taught the
you-
same stuff.
You were taught
Differently.
completely different in
Yeah.
New Jersey.
Especially,
So-
it's also like context based of like, you guys have a lot of Civil War history around here. This area is rich with Civil War history.
Yeah.
And so there's a heavier focus on Civil War history here, I've noticed in United States history classes and just history classes in general.
Yeah.
Whereas coming from New Jersey, we're very rich in Revolutionary War history. So there was more of a focus on that in terms of like in like middle school history classes, learning
Boston Tea
about
Party.
Oh yeah.
learning about stuff. Like I grew up like going on a field trip to like Monmouth County battlefield and like these different Revolutionary War battles. But down here, they didn't focus on it as much.
Yorktown, Jamestown,
But down here, that was in a
Williamsburg.
focus. So it was also kind of jarring to see like, oh, okay, this is different. Like we're not going to focus on this at all.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's like very context based, but it's also like it ends up being taken for granted sometimes because I feel like we talk about the Civil War, but we don't discuss like the stuff that's around us where like, oh, if you drive 20 minutes here, like this exit, you can find this particular battlefield. Like one exit south of me, down like near my house, there's like a really historic like fort and like battlefield with like a crater and stuff like that. Never been there, didn't know it was there until a couple weeks ago.
That's crazy.
And you just take it for granted, even though this is seemingly important stuff that I feel like should be mentioned sometimes.
Yeah.
But instead you get different context of people having arguments over which side was better militarily.
Yeah.
And things like that instead of learning like actually like what happened.
Yeah, and I wanna point out as well, just to kind of draw it back to our listeners. We do appreciate educators. I want to make that clear. We
Oh,
will.
yes.
We do
not.
have
Although we
don't
have
hate
criticisms of the
teachers.
systems, there is also good
Teachers.
educators
Yes.
in the system,
Very
like
much.
our AP Lit teacher,
Yeah.
teaching us
Yeah.
stuff about
Miss
racism
Brown,
movements, feminist
our
movements,
historical research teacher, teaching us all about that sort of stuff.
This
and
project
teaching us how
right
to
now,
research yourself
Yes.
so that you can educate yourself and talking about more things in context of politics and criticizing the education system herself, like our no card quizzes in APUSH, where you literally just copy down the exact same thing
Yeah.
from the textbook, and then your quiz is taking those note cards that you copied word for word from the textbook,
onto a sheet
bringing
paper.
those into them, copying your note card word for word onto a paper, and that's what you get graded on. And how stupid that is, like things like that.
I mean,
That's just so
skill
silly.
wise, like writing fast, it did help writing fast, but it was kind
Like
of
you can also learn how to
time.
you can also learn how to write fast from DBQs
Yeah,
and LEQs.
but the other
things like
essays
that.
he gave us, it was fine. We didn't. Yeah, they were just unnecessary.
Like there's definitely good educators, but it's still valid to criticize
Yeah.
the system.
I also want to say that, Kira, you said that there's a lot of bias interjected into the education system by teachers, and I feel like that's kind of a risk that officials have taken. Well, I guess they didn't really take that risk, but like,
I mean, it's expected to be.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone is gonna have their own bias no matter what you do.
Yeah.
It depends on how heavy it is and how much it affects the course. Everyone is obviously gonna have their own bias. It's impossible to have a human who doesn't
Yeah.
interject
Yeah.
their own bias into it. So I know that there's always gonna be bias. It's just a matter of how heavily it influences their class in particular.
Well, I was also going to say that it like changes your perspective. Like there are multiple perspectives to all of history.
Yeah.
And then, there are some wrong perspectives, of course. And then
They
you
were
know,
excited to go to the internment camps.
Yeah, like
They're just false.
sometimes that bias is good, sometimes it's not. Just
Yeah.
want to make that clear.
My history teacher spent 2 weeks on teaching us about cowboys and Indians,
Oh my goodness.
and we spent 1 day on civil rights. One.
And that really speaks.
And your curriculum is exact same as ours.
You guys use the exact same textbook, and we were taught
I'm
entirely
in
different classes.
I'm in dual enrollment, by the way.
We are
We're
in
in-
AP.
Me, Rohit, and Sid Pham are all in AP. Sid Cope is in dual enrollment.
Yes.
So with two different teachers with two different backgrounds. I feel like our teacher he tries his
teaches
best,
us.
but he
Yeah.
also he has a military background, so he tends to focus a lot on more of the military
he
aspect
definitely
and more
loves
war
talking about that
aspects.
stuff.
Makes sense.
Which
It makes
makes sense. Sometimes I wish that like he didn't do that because
Yeah.
like there's other things that we could be covering.
Yeah.
But it does make sense that coming from the Navy and a military background, he'll find that more interesting and that'll be the stuff that he wants to talk about more, especially given the fact that he doesn't do a slideshow or anything. He just gets up there and he just lectures and he just talks about the topic.
Honestly,
like
though,
it's not
I feel like the way he teaches it is he gives us the things that we need to know, and I appreciate that.
he
a lot.
teaches the material. I passed the class without reading the
Yeah,
textbook.
no, we're fine.
Yeah. And what was I going to say?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, everything you guys just said just brings me back to my point of the whole bias thing, right? Sid, you had your bias teacher, and then we had our relatively unbiased teacher because he has a national curriculum that was,
Yeah,
Yeah.
created by College Board and everything.
Yeah.
And then you have your dual enrollment class where he teaches you whatever he kind of wants. He has a general curriculum, U.S. history.
Yeah, but
And then-
but not to the extent that AP is not to
Yeah.
the curriculum.
Yeah, yeah.
We
So that-
get fill in the blank notes.
sounds
Like
like
my
middle
econ
school.
class. I feel it.
haven't
Oh
gotten
my
those
god, that's a
notes.
whole separate topic of how much school teaches you some useless stuff, and then you have one econ requirement required.
And then you're thrown into the real world.
Yeah, and I was about to say, like, we have that useless econ class as a requirement.
Yeah.
And
that
then-
useless. I feel like econ is one of the more useful things.
Oh, econ and personal finance is the only thing
Yes.
that I'm going to take away from high school.
Econ and personal
Yeah.
finance, I feel like,
Literally.
is more important than AP Econ because in AP Econ you
You
focus
learn
more on the
statistics,
economics,
graphs.
and then towards
Yeah.
the end you get to personal finance. In Econ and personal finance, when I took the honors class, it's flipped, so you spend most of the year on personal finance, and then towards the end of the year, after you've already taken your test and everything like that, we focused more on like, let's learn some of the interesting economic bits. So I feel like
Role of
that's
government.
the only class that I really took something valuable from that I can use in my day-to-day life. And a lot of the stuff we learn in school is useless. When am I going to need to take the derivative in my everyday life?
Biology.
Yeah, well, I definitely used the wrong word when I said useless for economics and personal finance, but they could definitely talk about more other things.
Yeah.
Because
Do you just mean like socially useless or like
not socially, but like there's more to personal finance than what they taught. Like taxes.
Wear nice clothes to your job interview and bring a resume.
Bring your
That was the topic.
I think
Yeah.
I think that Rohit, not to have you taken an econ and personal finance class?
Yeah, I did take it in 9th grade online.
So you took it
over
online.
the summer.
And who was your? Yeah. So you took it online over the summer. Between 8th and 9th grade, I took 2 classes over the summer, geometry and econ. And I remember I didn't finish the econ class because stuff happened. So I ended up dropping that one and continuing with geometry just so I could get that credit to put me forward in math in high school. But that was just context. But I remember learning in that AP class, that econ class, more about economics. So it's, even though it was the same course, I was learning different things online than I did when I actually took the class in person last year. So I feel like your context is also going to be different because for me, those classes were so different even though they had the same title.
Yeah, I don't think I learned as much because
I
it was
took it over
online.
the summer too. It was
Yeah.
it was definitely a little more. I feel like it was a little more watered down.
And I feel like my
Yeah.
econ teacher last year, he had more freedom to like give us his own
Mr.
personal
Miller?
experiences. Yes. Honestly, Mr. Miller, love that man.
Best teacher.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Honestly, like,
down with
I
the
never had
kids.
him, but I love him. Like he seems like a nice guy.
He still says my name wrong.
We should get back to racism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyways,
yeah.
I was just gonna say like that's a required class. Like
Our podcast
And
is
then-
just going to be ADHD in a podcast.
Oops. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
so yeah, that historical research class like that's required for Math Sci. But what if it was required for everyone, right? Like
I feel like it
I
should
feel
be
like
required.
it's such an
Yeah.
important class to take to give you context to research yourself and to discuss these topics in a way that isn't just like, this is what happened, memorize this for your test, but to have like an actual open discussion. Like I've had those discussions with Ms. Brown and other students in the class.
And
Yeah.
Miss Brown loves teaching that. Like I could see that she definitely likes teaching.
She's actually
this class.
passionate for teaching
Yeah.
topics.
Yeah. Okay. So we named like all the historical anti-racism movements kind of things. So I have a question of how effective do we think these movements were, and why were there more going on afterward? Like, were they as effective as they could be?
I mean, due to the context of as civil rights movements picked up, they started to gain support as they gained publicity. So they did grow and definitely created more as people started to form their own opinions and separate
created
off.
thought.
Yes. They implored people to actually think about it. They had more movements, so it's created multiple civil rights movements, like we talked about, and things like that. And I feel like there has definitely been progress. There's still a lot of work to do, but I feel like they were effective in what they wanted at the time. Like the people who campaigned for voting rights got voting rights in 1964. There's a whole other thing on like poll taxes and literacy tests that there was legislation passed for that when they got to there after their voting rights. That's a whole other separate
Not to
issue
say
right
that
now.
not to say that that didn't take time.
Yes,
Yeah.
Didn't
but
take
like
energy.
there have been successes in putting legislation through. There's still work to do, but I feel like to a certain degree, the issues that have been focused on have been helped historically. There's
Yeah.
still stuff that's happening, obviously, but I feel like there has been an effectiveness.
I feel like the overarching goal of all these movements is to change society, which is pretty much impossible, right? Because it's really hard.
I mean, it's possible to change society. I mean, maybe not as a whole.
Not
We
a
can't
whole,
do a
yeah.
complete overhaul, but it is possible to change societal ideals. Like, there will always be outliers. There will always be
Yeah.
people who disagree. Like, people aren't a monolith. You can't just like say everyone believes this. But it is possible to have societal change, especially you even see it between generations, how our generation, Gen Z, has generally different beliefs than older generations, and that'll bring about societal change as we get older, and society will change with the generations. And it's also more like you see different like surveys that have been done that show that more Gen Z is typically democratic, and that's been a societal change based on how we grew up and the internet and everything like that. So I feel like societal change and changing society as a whole is possible. It just takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it will never be 100%, but it can be something.
Yeah, that's what I was definitely thinking about. Like a lot of time.
It's like this change that we want as of now is very social, very like
Radical.
Yeah, that's why it's been very difficult because a lot of
the
people,
law can't. Well, the law, even like trying to change the law, can't really do much for societal change.
Especially
like-
if it is radical, because
Yes.
the law
Yeah.
takes so long
and
to
everything
be
is
changed
so
or altered.
polarized. Everything is so polarized
Yep.
that there's been such difficulty getting legislation through because people are unwilling to compromise. I feel like it's more important to think about like, okay, what can we do here that will benefit both sides, and we can at least get something through.
Yeah, what I want our viewers to know is that change does take time. So don't get frustrated too quickly. Just like calm yourself. Take a break from trying to change
Take a
society.
breather.
Yeah. You
Turn
know,
off
not gonna
Instagram
happen
for a couple
overnight.
weeks.
Yeah.
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 And then, regroup yourself, find a couple of friends, and then
Yeah.
go
and
back.
I mean, it's also so important that to try not to radicalize yourself, because I feel like it's one thing to agree with a certain group of people. It's another thing that when you see them, you automatically agree with their opinions. Because I follow some accounts that like generally post like different political opinions and different things that list like I think it's interesting to see to make me think about it and see their arguments.
Yeah,
And some
I
of the
do the
things
same
I
thing.
agree with, and some of the things it's like that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like people talking about like how allies need to stop saying this because that's stupid and you're just an ally. And I'm like, well, that's silly. Of like, I've seen arguments of people being like, well, allies buying pride bracelets is so stupid because I don't care about your little like woke merch or whatever. And I'm like, I think that that's stupid because I think that it shows, one, most of them are supporting like businesses that will support that. And two, you're showing your support for people who see you out in public and see that thing. Like just like little things that like, it's so important to not just agree with someone because your politics align and to not just blindly follow people and to think about it for yourself and form your own opinions, not just be like, oh, well, I agree with everything else that this account says. So like, obviously what they're saying is right and I must be wrong. Like, form your own opinions based on your own experiences and own research. Don't just blindly follow what you see.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot with like parents and stuff. Like, you know, you're gonna think naturally that everything your parents say is right, and then later you might grow up and realize, oh, they were probably wrong. Same thing with teachers.
Yeah.
You know, that whole thing about, oh, they're biased, and then you're gonna believe what they said, and then you might later realize, you know, they were wrong.
Yeah, I feel like this episode was a little bit all over the place just because one, there was the break in the middle, and two, I feel like
I didn't have as
we kind of went off on tangents.
cohesive topic as
I mean,
a lot
yeah,
of
it's
other
fine.
people did.
Everyone's format is going to be different,
but it was a topic and we talked about it. So thank you guys for listening. This was Sydney Pham, Kira, Rohit, Sid Cope.
yeah, thank you guys for
Thank you for listening.
I hope that you guys got something from this episode, even
I
if it was
hope.
just something, pulled something from it, and are able to learn something. Yeah, and
More
we
is
have,
coming. A little
we
more is
still
coming.
have our one last episode for my portion of the project. It'll be something a little bit different because we're going into New Jersey and we're getting into more recent history, but I think it's still going to be interesting. So yeah, we
Yep.
will hopefully see you guys next time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.